I'm Lily. Today I'm going to read you the story The Witches by Roald Dahl from page 12 to page 16. Okay, let's read it. My grandmother. I myself had two separate encounters with the witches before I was 8 years old. From the first, I escaped unharmed, but on the second occasion, I was not so lucky. Things happened to me that will probably make you scream when you read about them. That can be helped. The truth must be told. The fact that I am still here and able to speak to you, however peculiarly I may look, is due entirely to my wonderful grandmother. My grandmother was Norwegian. The Norwegians know all about witches, for Norway, with its black forests and icy mountains, is where the first witches came from. My father and my mother were also Norwegian, but because my father had a business in England, I had been born there and had lived there and had started going to an English school. Twice a year at Christmas and in the summer, we went back to Norway to visit my grandmother. This old lady, as far as I could gather, was just about the only surviving real lady we had on either side of our family. She was my mother's mother, and I absolutely adored her. When she and were together, we spoke in either Norwegian or in English. It didn't matter which. We were equally fluent in both languages, and I have to admit that I felt closer to her than to my mother. Soon after my 7th birthday, my parents took me as usual to spend Christmas with my grandmother in Norway, and it was over there while my father and mother and I were driving in ice weather just north of Oslo, that our car skidded off the road and went tumbling down into a rocky ravine. My parents were killed. I was firmly strapped into the back seat and received only a cut on the forehead. I won't go into the horrors of that terrible afternoon. I will get the shivers then when I think about it. I finished up, of course, back in my grandmother's house with her arms around me tight, and both us crying the whole night long. What are we going to do now? I asked her through the tears. You will stay here with me, she said, and I will look after you. Aren't I going back to England? No, she said, I could never do that. Heaven shall take my soul, but Norway shall keep my bones. The very next day, in order that we might both try to forget our great sadness, my grandmother started telling me stories. She was a wonderful storyteller, and I endured by everything she told me, but I didn't become really excited until she got on the subject of witches. She was apparently a great expert on these creatures, and she made it very clear to me that her witch stories, unlike most of the others, were not imaginary tales. They were all true. They were all the gospel truth. There were history. Everything she was telling me about witches had actually happened, and I had better believe it. What was worse, what was far worse, was that witches were still with us. They were all around us, and I had better believe that too. Are you really being truthful, Grandmama? Really and truly truthful? My darling, she said, you won't last long in this world if you don't know how to spot a witch when you see one. But you told me witches look like ordinary women, Grandmama, so how can I spot them? You must listen to me, my grandmother said. You must remember everything I tell you. After that, all you can do is cross your heart and pray to heaven and hope for the best. We were in a big living room of her house in Oslo, and I was ready for bed. The curtains were never down in that house, and through the windows I could see huge snowflakes falling slowly onto an outside world that was as black as tar. My grandmother was tremendously old and wrinkled, with a massive white body which was smothered in grey lace. She sat there majestic in her armchair, feeling every inch of it. Not even a mouse could have squeezed into sit beside her. I myself, just 7 years old, was crouched on the floor at her feet. wearing pajamas, dressing gown, and slippers. You swear you aren't pulling my leg, I kept saying to her. You swear you aren't just pretending? Listen, she said, I have known no less than 5 children who have simply vanished off the face of this earth, never to be seen again. The witches took them. I still think you're very trying to frighten me, I said. I'm trying to make sure you don't go the same way, she said. I love you and I want you to stay with me. Tell me about the children who disappeared, I said. My grandmother was the only grandmother and I ever met who smoked cigars. She lit one now, a long black cigar that smelled of burning rubber. The first child I knew who disappeared, she said, was called Ragnhild Hansen. Ragnhild was about 8 at that time, and she was playing with her little sister on the lawn. Their mother, who was baking bread in the kitchen, came outside for a breath of air. Where's Ragnhild? She asked. She went away with the tour lady, the little sister said. What tour lady? The mother said. The tour lady in white gloves, the little sister said. She took Ragnhild by the hand and led her away. No one, my grandmother said, ever saw Ragnhild again. Didn't they search for it? I asked. They searched for miles around. Everyone in the town helped, but they never found her. What happened to the other 4 children? I asked. They vanished just like Ragnhild did. How, Grandmama? How did they vanish? In every case, a stranger lady was seen outside the house just before it happened. But how did they vanish? I asked. The second one was very peculiar. My grandmother said there was a family called Christiansen. They lived on Hormacollion and they had an old oil painting in the living room, which they were very proud of. The painting shows some ducks in the yard outside a farmhouse. There were no people in the painting, just a flock of ducks on a grassy farmyard and the farmhouse in the background. Okay, so tomorrow I read more to you. Okay, bye.